IMMagine, a modern, highly urbanised and cosmopolitan country the size of the UK or Japan, but with only 4.6 million people, enjoying a balance of stable, big city living alongside a hearty, untamed and rugged natural environment. With its developed economy, stable democracy and highly dependable infrastructure, New Zealand provides a solid foundation for anyone living here to get ahead financially and also to build happy, peaceful and rewarding lives in New Zealand's wide open spaces. This is particularly true since first-rate taxpayer healthcare, education and social services are available to all. For the potential migrant, the process of moving to New Zealand is usually quite stressful, bureaucratically complex and expensive. We'd like to give you a broader insight into what life is like for those living in New Zealand. New Zealand really is the whole world spread across its North and South Islands, with rainforests, snow-capped mountain ranges, rolling green farmlands and subtropical beaches. It's often said that in New Zealand you could go snowboarding in the morning and surfing in the afternoon after just a short road trip. Such are the wildly contrasting landscapes and microclimates of the country. Generally, the New Zealand climate is moderate with 4 distinct seasons. In the North Island, summer temperatures range between a humid 25 and 30 degrees Celsius with winter temperatures in the mid-teens. Warm oceans make it humid, especially in the more northern areas. The more mountainous South Island sees snow on higher elevations, so winters are cool, generally drier than the north and warm in summer. The South Island is typically 3 to 4 degrees colder than the North Island at any given time of the year. The land area of New Zealand is approximately 268,000 square kilometres and takes roughly 2 hours to fly from the far north to the deep south. With New Zealand's volcanic origins, large parts of the country are hilly and rugged, making for a varied landscape. Equally, New Zealand is highly urbanised and industrial and one of the most technologically advanced and progressive societies in the world. New Zealand's commitment to innovation is enthusiastically embraced by a people with a strong general aptitude for technological advancement. The government has in recent years been instrumental in rolling out ultra-high-speed fibre optic cable across the entire nation, rural as well as urban. More than 85% of New Zealanders and the majority of migrants live in towns and cities versus rural and farming regions. New Zealand's largest centres are modern and cosmopolitan, offering many of the same activities and opportunities that you'd find in cities like Singapore, Sydney or San Francisco, without many of the drawbacks. The Māori people were the first migrants to settle in New Zealand, arriving several hundred years ago and developing a distinctive culture. The Māori culture is recognised and treasured by New Zealanders today. The signing of the Treaty of Waitangi between Māori chiefs and the British Crown in 1840 made New Zealand a British foreign colony, only becoming independent from Britain in 1947, although New Zealand remains a committed member of the British Commonwealth. The Pacific Islands have long been a source of migrants to New Zealand, with over a third of Auckland's 1.6 million people having Pacific Island ancestry. From the late 1980s onwards, increasing numbers of migrants from Asia entered the country, particularly Chinese, Korean and Indian people. This has added greatly to the cultural and ethnic mix of New Zealand, which is still predominantly European, of Scot, English and Irish extraction. 20% of New Zealanders were not born in the country, and in Auckland that number is over 40%. New Zealanders have always been an egalitarian bunch, living in a society committed as far as is possible to equal opportunity irrespective of family background, ethnicity, gender or age. New Zealanders are friendly and tolerant of others, as government surveys of migrant experiences attest. At the same time, New Zealanders are sceptical of authority and staunchly guard and exercise their democracy and rights. The country is small enough for all voices to be heard loud and clear, and New Zealand citizens and permanent residents value this freedom. New Zealand's egalitarian society is underpinned by a 3-year cycle of democratic elections for national representatives. It was the election of a centre-left Labour government in 1937 that laid the foundation for New Zealand to become one of the world's first complete democratic socialist states. The building blocks of this are taxpayer-funded healthcare, education and social security. That basic system, with a few modifications, is still in place today and remains the bedrock of New Zealand society, and is one of the reasons why you see no squatters and very few homeless people here. The aim is to reduce inequality whilst providing as much opportunity for all New Zealanders. By and large, it works. Every 3 years, 120 members are democratically elected under a system of mixed member proportional representation. To vote, you must be a citizen or permanent resident 18 years old and over, and must have lived in New Zealand for 12 months. New Zealand, then, is a family-focused society built on strong, involved communities where children have the opportunity to gain an education and thrive in a country where freedom is often taken for granted. By and large, New Zealanders believe they've created a decent society where we ensure as best we can that no one slips through the cracks. Sport and the outdoors are an integral part of life in New Zealand. Activities such as school or club-based cricket, rugby or netball, badminton and ping pong are encouraged for every student. Fishing, diving, skiing, yachting or golfing are also within easy reach. New Zealand's largest cities have the same wide variety of entertainment as any other major international urban centre, and every week in Auckland, some major international band or performer is usually in town. Housing in New Zealand ranges from multi-million-dollar waterfront mansions and penthouses to lifestyle blocks. With 85% of New Zealanders being urban dwellers, they tend to live in detached, freestanding houses, typically 180 to 220 square metres in size, with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, living areas and kitchen, as well as standard suburban family homes and city apartments. Auckland house prices in recent years have appreciated strongly and are usually significantly more expensive than other areas. In cities like Auckland, apartment living is increasingly popular, and outside of the major cities, lifestyle blocks and farms are first choice. In New Zealand, employees' rights are rigorously protected. Everyone enjoys 4 weeks of annual leave, an additional 11 annual statutory holidays, a minimum adult wage, and income top-ups for the lowest earners. Paid maternity or paternity leave is available to all workers for a limited time following the birth of a baby. Thereafter, additional maternity or paternity leave can be taken as unpaid leave, with that job being held open for the balance of 12 months as law. Getting employment should not be taken for granted, but work in New Zealand is a matter of when, not if, for those with an English-speaking background. With unemployment and interest rates low, New Zealand has had acute skills shortages across a range of sectors for many years, reflecting a mismatch between the jobs being created and the availability of locals to fill those positions. Work-life balance is taken very seriously in New Zealand, and New Zealanders are relaxed, good-time people who generally leave work behind at the office at 5 p.m. In terms of tax and capital, there are no controls limiting the flow of capital in and out of the country, and tax rates are not high by international standards. The country's taxpayer-funded education and healthcare systems offer the kind of security many in the modern world could only dream of, and New Zealanders pride themselves on the high standard of both. The health system is a mix of private and public sector providers, with the public system dominating, ensuring private medical costs remain much less than they are in similar countries. Medical insurance is not mandatory, but increasingly, Kiwi families have some form of hospital or surgery cover to avoid potential waiting lists for non-life-threatening conditions. New Zealanders see healthcare as a right, and the public health system continues to deliver a high level of service which is the envy of many countries. As with health and social security, taxpayer-funded education is viewed by New Zealanders as a fundamental right. Preschool and childcare centres are widely available, and eligible parents receive 20 hours of free childcare per week for children aged 3 to 5 inclusive. Most children attend free state schools, with fees-based private schools an alternative. Statistically, 97% of children attend their local state primary school and 95% attend their local state high school. School is compulsory between the ages of 6 and 16, and there is a great emphasis at primary school on creative and social development. At primary school, the basics of numeracy, literacy and personal development are taught. Core subjects at high school are English, mathematics, humanities, science, physical education, art and music. Increasingly, education is outcome-based rather than examination-based, with internal assessment at high school increasingly important. By the time most students leave high school, they will be expected to demonstrate minimum levels of literacy and numeracy through the National Certificate of Education Achievement or through the International Cambridge or International Baccalaureate exams. After 2 years at high school, students can select from a far broader range of subjects to study. More than 50% of school leavers in New Zealand move on to university, technical institutes or some other form of tertiary training. The country has 8 state universities and 25 polytechnics. While education at this level is not free, the institutions are subsidised by the state, covering about 75% of the true cost, making fees more affordable. Interest-free student loans are also available from the government. Auckland University is consistently ranked among the top 100 in the world, and the other 7 are in the top 500. While New Zealand is overwhelmingly safe as compared to most other countries, it still has crime. The difference, however, is crime in New Zealand tends to be crime against property, not people, with burglary the most common form of crime. Violent crime is uncommon, with a murder happening once every 10 days on average. 80% of murders are committed by so-called friends, family or acquaintances of the victim. In recent years, crime rates in all categories have been falling, the exception being sexual assaults, which shows rising convictions, but is explained by a greater willingness of victims to come forward. Not all New Zealanders are angels. Hard drugs do exist and are used by a small minority. There is no doubt that a link exists between crime and drug abuse. To offer some perspective, however, police in New Zealand do not carry guns, and nor is it lawful for the public to carry firearms. It is highly unlikely that you'll be a victim of crime. New Zealand children still play safely in the streets and parks without their parents worrying whether or not they'll make it home for dinner. Even in larger cities like Auckland, it is nothing to keep doors and windows wide open, especially during summer. If you are here today, you've probably done some of your own research into the processes, policies and costs involved in embarking on the journey to New Zealand. In theory, everything you need to know about how to qualify, prepare, lodge and process your own visa application is available for free on the internet. As with all legal processes, however, the detail is in the fine print, because migration is emotionally, logistically and financially complex. You should only want to do it once and do it right, because there's often no second chance. Migration involves more than filling out a few forms and buying an airline ticket. Migration has to be treated as a calculated risk, and the team at IMMagine know how to manage those risks, resulting in a success rate better than 99% over more than a quarter of a century. Government statistics publicly available suggest that visa decline rates for those applying without professional assistance are very high. It seems 63% of those filing expressions of interest under the skilled migrant category failed and never achieved permanent residence. IMMagine's role is to minimise the risk of failure by controlling the flow of information between you and the government official who sits in judgment on where you and your family may spend the rest of your lives. All of IMMagine's advisors are licensed by the New Zealand government and have a simple philosophy in both business and life. We will treat you as we would like you to treat us if we were in your position. With staff from all over the world, some of the team have actually been in your position, so they know exactly what it means to migrate. IMMagine's service runs to more than obtaining visas. We are there to offer you emotional support and information before and after you arrive in New Zealand. And we look forward to assisting you in achieving your migration objectives and welcoming you to your new home.